Hello, everybody. Welcome to, I guess what we're calling this is Heather and Jeremy Talk Socialist Theory. Jeremy Einbinder along with Heather Warburton. And we are going to talk today a little bit about Engel's The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State. Heather?
Yeah, it was a wordy read that we picked this time. It was definitely some dense material. This was my first time reading it, so I didn't really quite know what to expect when we picked it. But it's timely, though.
Yeah,
It's
with social relationships kind of being on hold for a lot of people, well, it seemed appropriate to talk about how capitalism commodifies all social interactions. Oh, even when and you can be have the ability to be able to interact with your fellow human. There are all sorts of other economic factors and social pressures at play that take away your free will of who you want to interact with.
Yeah, and like right now, like it couldn't have been better timing that we literally just had, the Trump and all of his people saying like, "Oh, well, maybe your grandparents have to die to prop up the economy." Like, what better timing could we be talking about the commodification and putting a value on people and their relationships and how much is your grandmother worth to you? That's the conversation we're literally having now.
I mean, but if you ask a lot of people, they'll say, "Of course, I don't want my grandma to die," but they don't think that it's going. They still don't get the point that, in order to stop pandemics like this in the future and other crises like this in the future, then the whole economic system is going to change. Um, the attachments that they have are going to be different, hopefully for the better. But a saying is often that the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Now, I'm hoping that the devil that these people don't know will be better for them, but people are scared even when they know they're being screwed over by their boss and their landlord, especially. They don't see the point in advocating for free housing and control over your workplace in such a way that would be helpful, even when you're not in a world ending apocalypse type crisis, which we are in, by the way, because of climate change, but this is a whole different thing.
Right. We have all kinds of things that are going to kill us lined up. I see we've got a first comment or a question for us from Mrs. Mandy Dunbar of, do you all have a ban on people coming to the tri-state area to say coming into New York or New Jersey from North Carolina? No, we do not have a ban. People are freely traveling within the state at the moment. Unfortunately, a lot of people are coming down to the Jersey Shore, so you can almost kind of see the infection coming down the parkway. Like it started up north and then it came to the next county and the next. And, down where I am in Atlantic County, I think we're lined up next is where it's going to stop on its parkway tour.
I'm less than an hour from New York City, so it's kind of weird to be like right in the kind of close to right in the center of it, but not quite. Well, like,
Right.
what's going on outside? Everyone, I'm getting sick and dying. Oh, great. That's terrible. But I'm here, safe in my suburban house that I don't want to be in. But you know, oh, that's another thing. When you're okay, you have a sense of guilt for the people who are not.
I don't know if it's guilt, but there's definitely some empathy and wanting I don't know if I would say I feel guilty, but I certainly wish that everyone had the same rights, that privileges that I have.
And for all the rights that people do have, there are lots of rights that most people don't have, even among the privileged classes. I mean, we're broadcasting from the US, which is one of the richest places in the world, but we are only able to have access to resources because other countries are not.
Right.
Anyway,
So I
oh
guess
yeah,
should we dig into what we read a little bit here?
yeah, let's do that.
So I definitely kind of thought it was weird that, this setup of it's Engels writing about Marx, and then Marx was writing about this other person, Morgan, who wrote Ancient Society. Like, you felt kind of like you were playing a little bit of a game of telephone at
Yeah,
times. How about you? Did you see that?
I saw that. I too, you know, oh, I had to look, who is Morgan? Who is Engels talking about?
Right.
Oh,
It seems like he's pretty forward thinking for his time. He wrote his book back in like the 1840s, I think it was. I didn't write that information down, but it seems like he was a pretty good and groundbreaking anthropologist for the time.
yep.
So what did you think? Did you learn anything from this read?
Well, I that he made interesting points when he made the point basically that at the Democratic Republic, it is uh, the most useful instrument in telling the classes apart. Like he said that the legal rights between men and women being equal will be when the inequalities between them are most pronounced. So, it sounds like he's almost saying that in a society in which everyone says everyone's equal and it's most important to realize when and you're not. So, oh, in the case of the classes that uh, don't own property but are able to vote, um, they may be lulled into a false sense of security and thinking at least I have say for the uh, for the spouse who still has to fight the expectation to be a homemaker, and the other spouse who has the expectation to be the breadwinner, usually the woman and the man respectively. There's generally a sense that and it's so great that we progress past the unequal stage of society and we're here. In every sort of present, there's a sense that there was a past in which things were not good, and in the present means that things are good now.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that he did in the book was kind of walk through a lot of phases of what the family meant in different, from all the way back to prehistory kind of to now. And a lot of the changes were not necessarily for the better, that in the primitive communism that we talk about, that, inheritance came down through your mother. But once capitalism and surplus value started being owned by men, they totally changed that around and changed women's role in society completely. So that you inherited through your father. And that meant that women had to be pure and chaste and couldn't, sleep around or act on their natural impulses. Only men were allowed to do that.
Yeah, and that goes to the whole dynamic of so-called slut shaming, with if you know, oh a man being able to sleep with as many women as he wants, but the women not being able to sleep with as many men as she wants, and or whenever a man has sex with a woman also has sex with a man. So, it's like saying a woman cheating on her husband is what's called adultery, and a man cheating on a woman. I forget the word that at Engels used for this. Is heter.
Yeah, I don't remember the word either, but it was much more accepted. Like, oh, that's just going to happen.
That's what guys do. You know. Oh, and he also said that only in proletarian marriage can monogamy really be. He realized because there's no sense of earning potential and economic power for the man and to use as power over the woman or women he wants to seduce. So, that's an interesting point that at for the capitalist as or economic considerations of relationships that don't generally exist within the proletarian class. Maybe because the proletarian class has nothing to gain. Like you might as
Right.
well
You have
go
nothing,
marry.
you have no power over anyone, kind of,
You might
so
as well.
you actually marry for love, not for economic reasons.
Yeah. There's a very telling passage where Engel's uh, says in A New Economic Order that the nuclear family will be destroyed. He says that. Hold on, let me pull it up. It says, with the transfer of the means of production into common ownership, if the single family ceases to be the economic unit of society, private housekeeping is transformed into a social industry. The care and education of the children becomes a public affair. Society looks after all children alike, whether they are legitimate or not. This removes all anxiety about the consequences, which today is the most essential social, moral, as well as economic factor that prevents a girl from giving herself to the man you love. So essentially, there's a pressure for mostly women to ask themselves, can I get a man who supports me economically?
Oh
Can
yeah,
I have
definitely.
kids in society in which I can't provide for myself because I don't make enough money, because most people don't make enough money. I think millennials are and I think millennials are marrying less now. I could be wrong about that, but it seems like there's less of an interest in ending marriage. Maybe to bring down the divorce rate, because as divorce has become gradually more acceptable, and there are people marrying later because they don't want to make a mistake. But there are so many times where people live with people they don't want to live with, if even people who are not romantically involved, because they're roommates. And the reason that they're roommates is because there's not enough money for people to live as they please.
Oh yeah, I definitely think that millennials are marrying later in life than I did. Like I got married, I think I was like 24 when I got married. And I know lots and lots of millennials that that's so not even on the table for
Right.
them. Like that's not even like in their radar at 24 because they may still have roommates themselves. Like they don't have that financial stability and that's kind of being robbed from people that may want to, get married whenever they are. That just that lack of financial stability is another way of controlling relationships, that you have that expectation of, especially for guys, of I've got to be the breadwinner, I can't get married until I'm the breadwinner, so you're
Yeah.
kind of being robbed of something.
I'm now at the age I was when my dad met my mom, so it may be irrational, but it does put a pressure on me. Like, am I doing the grown up thing right now? I'm not even close to where my dad was. What am I doing wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's also, that consideration with all types of friendships and relationships. Where do adults and even kids tend to make friends? Work, school, and work. If
Right.
you know, why do you go to school? Because you have to. Why do you go to work? Because you have to. You make your first friend in preschool or kindergarten because there's a person sitting next to you. When you make your friends at work, because that's where you spend most of your time. And when you're off work, you talk about how much you hate work, and you watch TV where other people, fictional people, talk about how much they hate work, or how much they love to make it on their own. And that's also even when there's a common trope in movies and TV where you move to a new city to make it on your own.
Right. Yeah.
and it's usually the case that it's not exactly what you wanted, but you're making the best of it. And the whole message of a lot of these movies and TV shows is that life can kind of suck, but as long as we're all in it together, can we can make it out okay. Oh, and there's generally yes, hence we go through our social lives tolerating annoyances, and sometimes worse than annoyance is harassment or oppression. That you know we never think to ourselves, it doesn't have to be this way, and it's not perpetuated in our media that it doesn't have to be this way because art imitates life, imitates art, and in the case of friendship, you know, and marriage and romantic relationships, you never really know the choices you would have made if there hadn't been in economic pressures that you had no role in creating.
Right. One thing I liked that Engel kind of did that opened up sort of my thinking was when he kind of compared a marriage contract to the labor contract. Like when you sign up for a job and people say, "Oh, you're both freely entering into this contract." And in a sense, okay, you agreed to work there, but what are your options? Like there's this major power difference.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing is in a marriage contract usually. And certainly historically, which is still imprinted on us, of this major power dynamic. So it can't actually be a valid contract. You're
Right.
never going to be on equal terms with your boss. So that's going to taint that relationship. The same as there's always a little bit of a tainting of a romantic relationship
Right.
because there's always this economic difference and women still relying on men to be the primary breadwinners and being forced to get so much less in wages. And I kind of, when I did a show about why women have better sex under socialism, there was a great analogy that really fits in now of that somebody, when East and West Germany united, there was a guy who was really annoyed at having to date women from the former Soviet republic, that because they expected men to be interesting. That they only wanted to date men that they found were interesting or captivating in something. They couldn't just rely on making money to get them chicks.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know what it would mean to be interesting because I'm entrenched in a system where a lot of relationships involve being able to do stuff and go places. And if you just like make philosophical conversation, there's not really that much to go on. But it's hard. You know, it's understandable that someone might not want to date someone in the society who doesn't have a car, who doesn't have their own apartment or house, who doesn't have a job, who is working all the time because all their energy is drained. And under a different economic system, people have the free time they need to cultivate relationships of all kinds.
Right. It's hard to have interesting conversation when all you're doing is working. Like you've got nothing else. You don't have a passion for what you're doing. You're just working to live. Like people are interesting when they're talking about their passions. Like society's set up so that we don't even have passions. Like you're too exhausted to do anything you care about.
Yeah, and even if you do have a passion, the way you talk about it is, I really like to do this, but I don't have the time.
Right.
Or, and if you do try and find your artistic or craft type passion, people are like, "What is this person in doing? Why are they giving up on financial security?" Oh,
I can speak firsthand to that. Trying to be a professional artist got me all kinds of interesting looks from my family. Uh, but I had to follow my passions. But I think kind of piggybacking off of what you just said, that, society is always changing and family is always changing, what that means. And we really can't even imagine what relationships would look like when we weren't under a capitalist system. And, Engels doesn't even try to. I think he says something to that effect of, I don't know what love relationships are going to look like
Yeah,
when we have an entire generation of people who haven't been under the yoke of capitalism.
right.
That he can't even begin to imagine that because he's under the yoke of capitalism.
He says, uh, he's as what we can now conjecture about the way in which sexual relations will be ordered in the impending throw of capital. Well, its production is mainly of a negative character, limited for what will disappear, but what will be new, that will be entered in a new generation. In a generation of men who never in their lives have known what it is to buy a woman's surrender with money or any other social instrument of power, a generation of women who have ever known what it is to give themselves to a man for any other consideration is then real love, or refuse to give themselves to their lover from fear of economic consequences. When these people are in the world, it will care precious little what anyone thinks what they ought to do. They will make their own practice and their corresponding public opinion about the practice of each individual, and that will be the end of it.
Yeah, that's pretty deep, to think about what that would look like, that people might actually, and I know that would bring the divorce rate down if everyone was just choosing people purely based on love and attraction and some mutual connection. That would definitely open up a whole different world. And imagine like children being children of the community, like right now the nuclear family robs you of so much connection with extended family and women. Oh, you've got to raise children. Like, it just
Can we
seems
talk
like
a
such
little
an
bit about
amazing.
why the nuclear family, the two parents with kids model, is an economic unit? Like generally speaking, in any economic system, two parents with kids could be an option. But why do you think it's an economic unit? Why do you think it's like a proprietarian type thing? That
Well, I mean, it definitely is, the control of who inherits your wealth, that you almost need to isolate your wife, as it were, from society a little bit to make sure that you're who your children are, you're going to pass along whatever wealth you've managed to get. And that's sort of the unit of control and the economic unit. And you're disconnected from everyone else because you wouldn't be controlling women as well if there was a more collective time spent as women together.
now you have to know, oh, which kid is quote unquote yours.
Yes, like it used to be so easy to know who your kids were when things were passed down through the mother line because everyone knows who their mother is, But once men were like, "Oh, I've got to know who my children are so they can get my wealth," things got a lot more complicated, and you really had to go to some convolutions of society to try to make a unit that fits that.
And why were men like that? Because they had more physical strength. Like that really what it comes down to is that oh, I'm stronger, so I deserve to control all the property. And
Well, I think Engels did go into a little bit about it. Of it was women in ancient civilizations controlled the home and the gathering. We're talking like very ancient civilizations, and men went out and hunted. But then when farming was introduced, I guess was sort of when things changed because men, for whatever reasons, I don't know if it was because of strength. I don't think Marx went in, or Engels went into it, that they were in charge of the plows.
right.
Men owned the plow. So they were the ones who were actually able to generate more than the family needed, which immediately started doing income inequality.
Yeah, but on the other hand, if it weren't for agriculture, human life wouldn't know how to proliferate it. So, well, there's always a contradiction there that agriculture may be the most important thing that ever happened to the human race, but it also caused misery for most of the population.
Right. Well, just that, inequality is what came out of it. Like agriculture is great, but and it didn't have to lead to inequality, people could have stayed a communal society, but it did in our case. And ever since then, capitalism's been fucking up all of our relationships.
Yeah. The particularly interesting thing is not only the Engels talked about who you, the economic impact of who you decide to interact with, but who you decide you can't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what friends and relationships do you choose not get the chance to make? What and you're living in a society that's bound by your money. If you can't live in a certain neighborhood, who don't you meet? If you and work a certain job because it takes years of training and skill that you don't have the time to learn, who don't you meet? And also, there's a lot of going back to the coronavirus, or is again, there are a lot of right wing memes trying to say that they care about farmers and doctors and grocery store workers instead of musicians and athletes. But if we were trying to have a society where everyone ate what they needed and ate what they needed and had the shelter that they needed, but had no entertainment, what kind of a life would we be fighting to live for? I think that we live so that we can have friendships, relationships, artistic expression. Even the things that a lot of people are considering, unimportant in the context of a global pandemic. Those are the things that we fight to get back to, because then what else do we have? Okay, we're able to go to work and then come back from work and go to sleep, but we also want to watch TV. And why do we want to watch TV? Well, mainly it's because we need to turn our brain off on a day of work. But what if we were able to, just play,
Right.
just hang out with our friends who we have because of a natural inclination to get along with one another. Now we really don't know all of the factors which led us to socialize with one another. We socialize with people who we may like, who we may not like, who we may find intolerable. Well, we also socialize because we need to, and we create because we need to. We play because if we don't do these things, we're social animals. We might go insane.
Right. Yeah. But all of that's kind of stripped away, that it doesn't create capital value. So it's not important, that we can't encourage people to have fun. That would, they're not producing something then. Why? They're not being productive. You've got to be productive 24/7 is
or more specifically, what they're doing is not exploitable to me. Therefore, I'm not going to encourage it. I think one of the more telling things is that at the more highly paid positions in capitalist society are ones that are able to have you playing. The athlete, the musician, the actor. Those are forms of play, and they get a lot of money because they're probably being implicitly told, not directly, but they're being implicitly told, we'll give you a lot of money, we'll make it advantageous for you to continue in the system if you're really, really good at what we want you to do. Don't disrupt because everyone's going to think you're a hypocrite if you do because you have a lot of money. But there's so many
left, it looks like we're coming up on our half hour here, so I guess you should probably get the last word.
There are so many different ways in which society could be different and social relations could be different if we didn't have a class society, a society with owners and with the owned, with workers and bosses. There are so many ways in which things could be better. There's so many artistic expressions and social relationships that we can form. If only we just I need to overthrow the system that we're under right now. And that's especially needed now, because if we don't, the planet's going to be destroyed. So
we're closing it out with the planet being destroyed. That's our last words.
Yep, felt that appropriate is the human population and the planet is going to be destroyed if we don't do something different, and that's serious. Because, it's not a stretch to call a pandemic a form of apocalypse. So, it might be a bit of a joke now, but it could always get worse if things continue.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
All right, well, it's been great talking to you tonight. I think we should do this again next month.
Yes, this was fun.
All right, guys, if you want to participate, we'll put out in probably a week or so, what we're going to be reading for next time. And, you can join us on the live stream and ask questions or join in your comments if you've read along with us. And you're like, no, you guys are idiots. You're interpreting that totally wrong. You can jump in with that. I'd like to have more people that can join us and share insights and stuff with us. So until next time, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month.